This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Chapter 51, Against the Shadow, and our symbol is the heron mark blade. The land tended upward, the way Rand went, but fear lent his legs strength, and they ate ground in long strides, tearing his way through flowering bushes and tangles of wild rose, scattering petals, not caring if thorns ripped through his clothes or even his flesh. Moraine had stopped screaming. It seemed as if the shrieks had gone on forever, each one more throat-wrenching than the last, but he knew they had lasted only moments altogether, moments before Aginor would be on his trail. He knew it would be him that Aginor followed. He had seen the certainty in the Forsaken's hollow eyes, in that last second, before terror whipped his feet to run. It's a great, horrifying opening.
Moraine is just screaming. Do you think it's terror? Do you think it's pain?
It's got to be pain.
Because I can't imagine Moraine ever screaming in terror.
No, she wouldn't just lose her shit for no reason, even while looking at something terrifying.
So he's just running, basically running uphill?
Yeah. And he gets to a cliff, turns around, Aginor's there already, essentially. And we also see the frantic thoughts in italics, that kind of beginning of when Rand is about to embrace the source, when he has the terrible need, when he's starting to panic.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, that when it's italicized, that's when he's really starting to, get intense in his head.
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes that's just a thought, but correct me if I'm wrong, Seth and people out there, but I feel like almost always before Rand channels, at least in the eye of the world, until he's aware of what he's doing, he starts to have these frantic thoughts, and there's probably two, like here, Rand's thinking, there has to be some way. I'll go back and find a way around. Go back, and when he turned, Aginor was there. And so we see the need here. And then late, 2-3 paragraphs down, there's another line, and then he embraces the source. He starts pulling on the eye of the world.
I just had one question here. Aginor sort of gives a little speech. Again, he's monologuing.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, Baal-Zaman will give rewards beyond mortal dreaming for the one who brings you to Sheol Ghul. Baal-Zaman is an odd choice here for Aginor to use. Because unlike the Trollocs, that's the Trolloc name for the Dark One.
Right.
Okay, I think I just answered my own question. So my question was, isn't the only one who would, the Trollocs would call him Baal-Zaman. He calls him, the boys call him Baal-Zaman. But here, Aginor is referring to the Dark One.
Right.
Not to Ishamael. So that's why would he call the Dark One Baal-Zaman
rather than Shaitan?
Rather than Shaitan or just the Dark One. And I don't think he's talking about Ishamael, because he calls him Ishamael.
Yeah.
And then when I was thinking about it, my answer to the question is, well, this is the guy that created the Trollocs. Of course he'd use the Trolloc name for the Dark One.
Sure. I'm sure he's very proud of that.
Right. That's the only reason why I can think he would use that name for the Dark One when everyone else pretty much uses it for Ishamael.
And then later he says, what difference if you serve the great Lord of the Dark alive or dead? None. He's definitely talking about the Dark One and not Ishamael, who's not Nablus yet.
No, not at this point.
So he wouldn't be bestowing anything to the other Forsaken.
I don't know what his rank is exactly. I mean, he's been out, he's been accomplishing things, while the rest of them have been trapped. So I could see where he may be slightly elevated.
Yeah, for all the chaos he's created.
Totally.
I mean, the Black Aja, the Trolloc Wars, War of the 100 Years.
Right.
After Artur Hawkwing. This is all important stuff.
Totally.
For the Dark.
For the Dark. You mentioned Nablus, and
yeah.
I think that one of the reasons that Aginor wants to kill Rand is he doesn't want to risk Rand becoming Nablus.
I think that's a good observation. I think that's almost definitely true. Oh, yeah. He says, what difference if you serve the great Lord of the Dark alive or dead? None. To the spread of the shadow. Why should I share power with you? Why should I bend the knee to you? I, who faced Luther and Telamon in the Hall of Servants itself. And he just goes on to brag.
Mm-hmm. Which I don't know how accurate that bragging is. It's like, you faced him? Did you argue with him?
Yeah,
like,
what does that even mean?
Right.
I'm not sure, but I think you're really right. You're definitely right there, because he's saying, why should I share power with you?
Right.
It's like, why shouldn't I just kill you?
Whereas the Dark One's goal is really to turn him.
Yeah.
So Rand panics.
Rand's mouth dried like dust. His tongue felt as shriveled as Aginor. And then the next thing I have at the bottom of this paragraph, his skin crawled until he thought he must see it writhing if he looked. If he could only take his eyes off the Forsaken. There has to be some way to get away from him. Some way to escape. There has to be. Some way. And then the next paragraph is Rand embracing the source.
And so he embraces the source, and he sees this glowing rope from behind Aginor.
Mm-hmm.
And that rope is Aginor's connection to the pure Sidene in the eye of the world.
Right.
And Rand manages to peel off a little sort of sliver of that and start directing some of the power into himself.
Yeah, he takes it from Aginor. One bright finger strand lifted away, drifted, touched him, and he gasped. The strand thickened at the end of the paragraph, and Aginor freaks out and says, "You shall not have it.
It is mine." And so we get this basically this struggle where they're both trying to pull the light to themselves, and they're being filled with this just uncomfortable warmth. Rand continually describes the heat.
The heat of the light.
Exactly.
Yeah, he says it over and over, or the thought crosses through his mind like 5 times on every page for the rest of this chapter.
And we see flames erupt from Aginor's mouth and broke through his eyes, and he screamed. So what I'm seeing happening is essentially the two of them are playing tug of war on this one power, and they're both pulling more and more and more and more until finally Aginor pulls too much and burns himself out.
Yeah, I think that's what happens. We had talked about this recently, and I wasn't sure that was what happened, or like that's what you were saying, and I wasn't sure. But Ishamael says something. Ishamael says in a couple of pages, "Yes, Baelzamon said it in front of the fireplace. I thought Aginor's greed would overcome him, but it makes no difference in the end." So, and I interpreted that as, I thought Aginor's greed would overcome him, as in, like, he just kept he's trying to fight Rand to dominate the pull on the eye of the world, and he tries so hard that he literally just burns himself out.
Right.
Because Rand is so much more powerful.
He can hold more power. So another theory I read about why the eye of the world is needed is that later we hear about how Egwene is forced when she becomes part of the Shanchan. And she, because she's forced to channel, her power grows faster than normal. And that's a risky thing because you can burn yourself out or kill yourself.
Yeah.
I think that perhaps the eye of the world is forcing Rand here. That because he's forced to channel all this power, he's in a lot of ways leveling up quicker than he otherwise would have, and becomes more powerful more quickly than he otherwise would have.
I think that's definitely true.
And we talk about how women tend to grow in power in a sort of a gentle slope. They tend to get more and more powerful as they get older and as they channel more. Men tend to jump in spurts. So they tend to be at one power level and then suddenly at another higher power level. And so I think that this Eye of the World may have really jumped Rand up a few power levels. And if he hadn't been able to make that jump, it would have burned him out, just like it did to Aginor.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think Robert Jordan gave us, like, not just hints here, but we see over and over, and this is him moving back a bit, but warmth built in Rand, the warmth of the sun, the radiance of the sun, bursting, the awful radiance of the light. And it's like a very obvious, overt way to say, like, he's drawing in this crazy amount of the power.
And it's burning him. I think it's burning away his... I was reading some Mercedes Lackey, The Last Herald Mage. I don't know if you've ever read that series.
No.
But he's sort of a normal guy until he burns away the channels in his mind that allow him to control magic. And in a similar way, this feels very similar to me, that Rand is sort of it's almost like he has these channels that he can pull magic through, and by pulling this just massive amount, he's burning away the channel and making it larger, so he can hold
obstacle.
Yeah, he can hold more and more power.
Almost like boring a bigger hole by pulling more water through it, say.
Exactly. But you pull too much, the tunnel collapses, and you get Aginor.
Flames shot from Aginor's mouth, broke through his eyes like spears of fire, and he screamed. And Rand was no longer on the hilltop. He quivered with the light that suffused him. His mind would not work.
He says away in his head in italics right before that.
Oh, yeah. That's is more
super
important than now that you're pointing that out.
If you go back up the page, there's a few times where he's saying away in his head. He's channeling and saying away, away, away. And so he's somehow, I don't know if he doesn't create a gateway as far as I can tell, but somehow manages to teleport himself.
It's not a gateway.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely not a gateway. The description is literally, and Rand was no longer on the hilltop. He quivered with the light that suffused him. His mind would not work. Light and heat blinded it. The light. In the midst of the void, the light blinded his mind, stunned him with awe. He stood in a broad mountain pass, surrounded by jagged black peaks, like teeth of the Dark One. And then after this battle scene, he has the thought that he wants to end it. And suddenly there's just this stairway that leading up, and he climbs the stairs, and at the top there's a door, and he touches the door and it explodes, and he walks through, and he's in Teleran Riyadh.
Yes. But there's a few things that happen before then that I think are pretty important.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But I guess I wanted to bring that up because there's an interesting thing happening here with need and desire that I don't fully understand what's going on, but we see Rand do this later, and other channelers who don't know what they're doing, where they just want to do something and they make it happen.
Like we see Avienda, she wants to get away from Rand, and she creates a gateway to Shan-Chan.
Yeah, for the first time in like 3,000 years, someone
Right.
makes a gateway.
So that's clearly a talent of hers somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely something that he has this need, and he somehow appears away, but also in Tarwins Gap.
Where he needs to be.
Which
is, it's a Teleran Riyadh-esque thing to do.
Yeah. It feels very much like the last battle, where there's a mix of Teleran Riyadh and the real world, and they sort of seem to overlap a little bit during this battle. I think that might just be the effect of the pure physical Saidin.
I like that theory because I don't have anything else.
Right. That's where I'm coming from. It's like, what makes this scene different from some of the other channeling that we see? Well, he's channeling this pure.
I don't know how much Moraine really knew about what she was talking about earlier when she said, she doesn't say that it's Saidin. She says that it's the essence of Saidin. It's a like clean, purified form.
Right.
That could mean any number of things. Like, is this somehow special? It could be.
I don't think it's the same as the true source, because the true source is the Dark One's power. And this is definitely the one power purified and created in a physical form.
I'm going to go more with Rand's Tavera nature, and maybe there is something special about this Saidin and the fact that it's already been drawn.
Maybe.
From the source, and there's a stockpile of it.
The point is, well, I guess my point is something weird is happening very quickly here. So this is this battle scene where he pops in to the middle of the battle, and it's almost over, and he basically takes all of that raw power and sends it right at the Trollocs and kills them all.
Oh, I have a interesting note here. When Rand is looking at the battlefield and he's describing how there's like just a handful of Shinaran soldiers left, and then he looks over at the other side, and this is it's the three banners that make the chapter heading that represents Trollocs.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that means anything or if that's some purpose, but
We've definitely thought that, maybe it was the three. There were times when we speculated really early on
Why
the
are
first
there
time
three?
why there
Yeah.
were three and who they were, and it's these three.
That's
Awesome.
The horned skull of Deval, the blood red trident of Kobal, and the iron fist of Daimon.
Totally. Nice catch.
Huh. Yeah.
Nice catch.
That's the Trolloc chapter heading. Rand found himself facing the end of the pass where the humans were reforming. And then I have staggering, he turned. I'll read some of this. The forces of the Darkwen filled the other end of the pass. Bristling black pikes and spear points, swelling up onto mountain slopes made blacker still by the great mass of Trollocs that dwarfed the army of Shinar. Fades in hundreds rode across the front of the horde, which is a crazy amount of fades.
In the hundreds? Yeah. I think we only see that once. I think there's a scene in the last battle where like a battalion of Fades comes out and fights. But I think that's the only time where we see that number of Fades gathered in one place.
Important. Yeah. Even if, say, the Aiel were to have gotten involved, like if this Trolloc invasion continued on south, nobody would be able to get there fast enough to repel it.
No. And there'd be more reinforcements arriving from the Blight every day.
Yeah.
This is an unstoppable force of Trollocs if they get past the gap. Unstoppable. And they are clearly winning this battle. There's one last rush, but the Borderlanders are pretty clear that they're going under in this rush.
They know they're going to die at this point.
Yeah. They don't have any hope that they're winning this battle.
The fierce muzzled faces of Trollocs turning away in fear as they passed, up from the Fades. Huge bodies pulling back to make way. Overhead, Draghkar wheeled on leathery pinions, shrieks challenging the wind. Half-men saw him now too, as the humans had. Pointed, and Draghkar spun and dove, 2, 3, 6 of them, crying shrilly as they plummeted toward him. He stared at them. The heat filled him, the burning heat of the touched sun. He could see the Draghkar clearly. And then I have, and the charred forms felled to leave the sky clean again. Each 6 lightning bolts for 6 Draghkar, and kills them all. And then the heat, the terrible heat of the light. This repeating.
Right, we keep coming back to that heat. That's the pure essence.
And then Ran starts screaming. And the wind rose with his voice, howled with his voice, roared with his voice down the pass, whipping the flames to a wall of fire that sped away from him and toward the Trollocs host faster than a horse could run. And then I also have the earth channeling stuff, where he pounds his fist and turns the earth into a gong. We see Moraine do that once.
Oh, that's right. Because
I think Egwene does it a few times later. Same thing.
She like hits the ground repeatedly to
With
create
her staff,
resonance.
And it's like the ripples in a pond that turns into like... It describes the wave of earth breaking over towards... I think they're just buried.
I mean, Rand he slaughters these Trollocs. He has more power than I'd say he has at any other time in the series, except for when he uses the Choden Call. I'd say it's even more power than Kalendor.
I think that might be right. And I mean, the things he does with Kalendor they seem to be like on this level.
Right. This seems to be Kalendor level power.
He's doing something special here. I think it must have to do with the eye, but we don't know enough about the eye to say why this works the way it works. But something special is definitely happening.
The next really important thing after these battles is, of course, the all capital letters. Right. The all mysterious all capital letters that, I mean, I feel like I've read theories up and down the internet. And I don't think
so many.
So many.
After the wind dies and the screams die down and the earth is still, Rand yells, "The light blind you, Belzamon, this has to end." And then, "It is not here." In all caps and italics.
It was not Rand's thought making his skull vibrate.
"I will take no part. Only the chosen one can do what must be done, if he will." Where? He did not want to say it, but he could not stop himself. Where? He describes that all the dust parts around him, and he's standing in like a clear sphere. And the voice responds, "Not here."
And these are the steps that lead him up into Tel'aran'rhiod.
Darkness surrounded him, the utter blackness of total nothing. Steps were there, hanging in the black, under his feet and ahead. And this is where he climbs up.
So let's talk about those words. It is not here. What is it?
I don't know.
All right. A couple of theories.
It
about
is not here.
The only other character we see talk in all caps is the Dark One.
Yeah.
So, of course, the first assumption is...
It must be the creator.
Is this the Dark One?
I
feel like those are the two theories. Like, we have the idea that maybe it's the creator. And that would make sense. Rand is connected to this pool of pure essence of creation. It seems like now would be the right time for him to hear the creator's voice.
That seems
reasonable.
Legit.
Yeah, that like now that, you know, when people talk about the greatest need that ever existed, maybe the need is Rand al'Thor needed to hear the creator's voice. And maybe he needed to be led into Tel'aran'rhiod.
Okay. I mean, that's clearly important to slow down Ishamael.
Sure. Option number 2, this is the Dark One leading him into a trap. And I like that theory more.
I like it too.
Because the idea that this is the creator, you know, he says, "I will not take part, only the chosen one," you know.
Can do what must be done, if you will.
Yeah. And I get that he's saying, hey, the battle's not here. I think when he says it's not here, I think he's saying the battle's not here. And I think the steps leading into Tel'aran'rhiod are created by Baalzamon.
Yeah?
It's a theory.
Okay, well...
It seems like it's a trap. It seems like it's a... That if we assume that at no other point does the creator ever talk to Rand.
What about at the end?
What about the end?
Isn't there a part in all caps that people think is the creator? I thought it was this and one other time that people think the creator speaks.
Oh, another good theory is that it's Lewis Theron Telamon yelling in his head that the source isn't there or something, you know? But again, the one thing that makes me hesitate is that we never see Lewis Theron talk in all caps. It's this all caps thing that just keeps throwing me for a loop. The only other character we see in all caps is the Dark One. But this is one of the big mysteries of the series, you know, along with the mysterious Aiel woman, the pipe lighting.
Here it is. In A Memory of Light, I wish I could give you a little more context, but just a quick search. There's a part where an all caps voice says, "It is time. Let the task be undertaken." And some people think the rest of the dialogue or the rest of the narration after that is, the voice spoke with the inevitability of an earthquake, the words vibrating through him. More than sound in the air, far more. The words spoke as if one soul to another. Moraine gasped, eyes opening wide. Rand was not surprised. He had heard this voice once before, and he realized that he had been expecting it, hoping for it at least. "Thank you," Rand whispered, then stepped forward into the Dark One's realm, leaving footprints of blood behind. People think that may be the same voice that's speaking now to Rand.
Yeah, and the voice that you just described talked about vibration, and the one in this chapter talks about making his head vibrate.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting to think that it could be the Dark One anyway.
Right.
But I'm inclined to think it's something else. I don't really want to say it's the creator, because why have 4 lines in the entire series? I mean, okay, I guess I could say why that would make sense to do that, but
and then you've got Navani.
That's something that popped into my head. The mysterious female character. What's her name?
Nakomi.
Nakomi, that's it.
And I've seen everything from Nakomi being Rand's mother to an avatar of the creator to a previous dragon. You know, somehow I think these mysteries are all wrapped up together.
Yeah.
The voice of the creator, Nakomi, the pipe lighting. I want to know how they all relate, and I'm not sure we're ever, of the series, out of all the things that I think I know what's going on, or I can figure out what's going on.
This one's a mystery.
This one is a mystery.
I'm gonna read this, and it's a question and answer session with Brandon Sanderson that I think answers this question as good as it could be answered.
Sure.
I'll just read it. You'll get what I mean in a second. This is a question from a guy named James, asking, is Nakomi the person that Rand encountered at the mouth of Shale Ghul, and is she the embodiment of the creator? Sanderson says, this is one that I'm not answering, I'm afraid. RJ wanted some things about the ending to remain ambiguous. Did we ever meet the creator in the series? If so, who? Another question. I'll preface this with a warning, Sanderson says. Even though the series is done, and I can speak more freely, some things are intended to be vague by RJ's own intention. This allows dreaming and thinking about the world to continue. For example, I can't answer question 2 for these reasons. For question 1, I think RJ himself was vague. Maybe a Theorylander can speak here. Sanderson says, and that's what we are. This isn't one I'm capable of answering, because I don't want to make an answer canon one way or another, as I don't think RJ wanted that. And we can interpret that in a million ways, but I think nobody knows.
Nobody alive.
Right.
Harriet might know.
She's not saying anything.
No. She's keeping that as, if Nakomi's anybody, it's Harriet.
Oh, I like it.
As the editor of all the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be her. Because we know, Jordan puts himself in there as the Terangrial that stores all the books.
Yeah.
That little...
I remember it.
The statue is a description of Robert Jordan.
Wait, was that a fat man too?
Yeah. It's not... Because there's the fat man Angrial that Rand keeps in his pants.
Yeah.
And then there's the
I always pictured it as like the Happy Buddha when you walk into a stereotypical Chinese restaurant.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
That's the Angrial.
He's just like really fat and happy, and his belly button sticking out of his shirt.
Totally.
And stuff.
Totally.
That's what.
But the one that produces all and stores all the books, that's the library. That's a statue of Robert Jordan. So he gets his own
I always
cameo.
imagined it as a Buddha just because that's, I don't know, what popped in my head.
Totally.
Same thing with the fat man. That I think he's holding a sword or something.
Oh, yeah, that's
but I
right.
saw that as kind of Buddha too.
Right. Buddha with a sword?
Yeah, like pre-Buddha. Fuck.
Buddha.
Siddhartha.
Oh, right.
I don't know. Robert Jordan wasn't that fat. I'm scrolling through pictures right now. He wasn't. He was just
No. I mix him up with George R.R. Martin in my head in terms of like.
He doesn't look like he's gonna win any distance, like he's gonna win a marathon or anything. But he's.
Well, he was a really tall guy, so even though he's not
he's
that
a big
fat,
dude.
I think he was like 300 pounds just because he was like 6'9" or something like that. Which explains why he makes all his main characters, so tall. Because he himself was just ridiculously tall.
I like that theory. I'm pulling up a picture of Robert Jordan looking kind of chubby, sitting happily with a cane.
Yeah.
Could that be the Terangrial?
Basically. Yeah, that's sort of what I think of. All right, back to the chapter?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Or are you still looking up?
No, that was... I totally found what...
Okay.
The dialogue with Sanderson that I wanted to find.
Perfect. So somehow he gets this pathway into Teleron Riyadh, whether it's a trap, whether it's created by the creator, whether it's something he does with the true power or the one power. The only thing I can think is that because the true power is the essence of the Dark One, by channeling this pure version of the one power, he's channeling the essence of the creator, and that's how he's able to hear the creator in this moment.
I like that. And here I have darkness surrounded him, the utter blackness of total nothing. The steps were still there, hanging in the black. Doesn't that sound a lot like skimming to you?
It does. The place in between, or the place where the ways are from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think he's, we know you can create a gateway to Tel'aran'rhiod. I think he's basically skimming
To
Tel'aran'rhiod.
Yeah.
And just using fixed steps to get there.
That's what I think is happening here. Same concept. He's just built a stairway.
Exactly.
He climbed until suddenly a door stood before him, its surface rough and splintered and old, a door well remembered. He touched it, and it burst into fragments. While they still fell, he stepped through, bits of shattered wood falling from his shoulders. The chamber, too, was as he remembered. The mad, striated sky beyond the balcony, the melted walls, so on, is where Ishamael hangs out.
Now, this is a dream shard, and we know dream shards are kind of separate from reality.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me wonder if maybe the creator was saying it's not here. Is he saying Baalzamon is not in this reality? He's in his own dream shard.
Yeah.
And he's sort of...
Baalzamon is there physically.
Right.
Why does he say it is not here? That is so...
The battle is what I'm thinking. The battle is not here. The battle is where Baalzamon is. Meanwhile, while Rand's doing this, we see the bright glowing cord that connects him to the Eye of the World that he took from Aginor.
Yeah.
Following him through this darkness.
Yes, Baalzamon said from in front of the fireplace. I thought Aginor's greed would overcome him, but it makes no difference in the end. A long search, but ended now. You are here, and I know you.
And here's where basically he confronts Baalzamon and sees the cord that Baalzamon has, which is not a connection to the Eye of the World, unlike the one Aginor has.
It's a direct connection to the Dark One.
And I imagine this is not just a filter for the one power. It's actually a direct connection of true power.
Yeah, at various points in the series, Ishamael is shown, I don't know if it's directly said, but he has pretty much totally unfettered access to the true power.
He's the only one who does.
Yeah.
And he uses it.
Uh-huh.
Even if the others have access, they're very hesitant to use it.
And it's, I think it's rationed out to the others. They don't get to use it in the same way that he does.
One thing I noticed is that Aginor's description, when he dies, when the one power floods him and burns him out,
yeah,
the description is very similar. He has flames coming from his eyes and mouth, very similar to Ishamael.
I noticed that too, and it made me wonder if Aginor tries channeling the true power or pulls too much true power to try to in an attempt to overwhelm Rand, but there's nothing else for it other than that one line. So
my assumption is that essentially Ishamael is using enough power that should burn him out, but because it's the true power, he's somehow moderating it and like
Ishamael?
Yeah. I don't know. I got nothing there. I just know the description was similar. I'm not sure if there's any connection.
Oh yeah.
But just the fact that maybe
like there's one, but
maybe Ishmael's like basically burning himself out constantly by using the true power.
Well, can you burn yourself out with a true power?
I don't know. Depends on how much the Dark One's going to give you.
Yeah. And weirdly, I mean, Rand is able to channel the true power as well.
Sure. Part of that is his bond with Ishamael, is that he's using the access that the Dark One has granted Ishamael for himself. So that comes back to the crossing of the streams of Balefire.
Yeah.
And that the pattern considers Ishamael and Rand as sort of the same thread. That's the only way to resolve the paradox of Balefire streams crossing, is that there weren't two Balefire streams. There was one fired from one person. And so in a lot of ways, those two become the same thread. And so the Dark One grants access of the true power to the thread of Ishamael, Moradin, at that point. And because they're the same thread, that gives Rand access.
Able to use it.
Yeah.
Or to draw it through Ishamael.
Yeah. And then, of course, later when Moraine and Nynaeve take control of Moradin during the last battle, they're able to pull and then turn it over to Rand. Rand
use
is
the
able
true power as a shield.
Just pull all of it. every bit that Moradin has access to.
Yeah.
They're able to pull it through Kalendor. And because Kalendor and Ishamael both had such great access, the Dark One is unable to cut off the supply. There's just too much being pulled out of him. Sort of like trying to shield someone who's already channeling.
Right. Highlighted the part about Jane Farstrider, but we've talked about this before, where Ishamael says, I began the setting of your path the day you were born. And he mentions Jane Farstrider, a hero. He twisted the word to a sneer, whom I painted like a fool and sent to the Ogier thinking he was free of me. The Black Aja, and he mentions a bunch of things that he's...
Well, there's some of these I want to talk about.
Sure.
A path to lead you to your grave or to here. Aiel allowed to flee and one to live, to speak the words that would echo down the years. So that's basically all the messages about the Eye of the World. That sort of reinforces the idea that this whole thing is a trap.
Yeah.
Because Baalzamon set up the Aiel to send the message. He sent
orchestrated by Ishamael, you mean?
Yeah. Because he sent the Aiel to a dying Aiel to leave a message.
Mm-hmm.
He sent Jane Farstrider to the Ogier for the message, and he himself was the third source in the dreams. So all three of the sources about the Eye of the World come directly from Ishamael. So he set up this whole thing 20 years ago.
Yeah. Huh.
Which makes me come back to the voice is the Dark One, and this whole thing is a trap.
I like it.
But to me, it seems that the last book is written as though it is the creator. So I don't... It's deliberately ambiguous.
Right. That's why I wanted to read that thing from Sanderson. Because I think he's not clear, but makes it maybe a little bit clearer when he says...
It's deliberately not clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be like, we can look at evidence for both sides and nothing's conclusive, and that's deliberate.
Right.
And I think that's okay.
The idea is for you to wonder.
Exactly. Think about it. Tell us your best theory.
Yeah. Send us your theories.
There's a little bit of monologuing here, sort of how the Dark One describes almost annoying Rand rather than trying to wipe him out. I sent a fist of Trollocs when I could have sent 1,000. And I'm not sure how much of that is him just like bullshitting when he didn't know exactly what village it was.
It's hard to say, yeah.
But some of that I think is him actually using the strategy of the Dark One to harry and harass and make Rand feel desperate rather than...
Mm-hmm. To drive him in some sort of direction rather than just kill him.
Exactly.
And I mean, Ishamael definitely could have killed Rand.
Maybe before he had the true source, the Eye of the World. I think now that Rand has access to an insane amount of power.
Yeah.
And I think he's a real threat to Ishamael.
In a moment when Ishamael does this strange thing with Rand's mother.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Is that a total illusion?
That...
It doesn't seem to be.
That is something that could be illusion, or it could totally be something. The Dark One clearly has access to the souls of dead people.
Resurrected Carrie Althor, because...
But here's my thing. He doesn't have access to the souls of people who died in the past.
Right, they have to have died right now.
He has to have captured them when they died. I don't think the Dark One was free enough to have captured Carrie Althor's soul.
I just thought it was strange that she thanks him for saving her at the end of this little sequence.
I think it's all a mind game.
Yeah.
I really do. I think he's in Ishamael's dream shard. And again, this chapter is just full of ambiguous things that we never get any proof for one way or the other.
Oh, yeah.
Whether Carrie Althor is real or an illusion, it certainly plays on Rand's mind.
And he does all this with a sword that he makes out of light. Or Rand does this with a sword he makes out of light, and he's like shooting from it.
Do you think that's balefire?
I think it's a sword made out of balefire.
I thought you might think that.
Because then Ishamael says, he says, "You fool, you'll destroy yourself. You can't wield it so. Not yet. Not until I teach you." "It is ended," Rand said, and he swung the sword at Baelzamon's black cord. Baelzamon screamed as the sword fell, screamed till the stone walls trembled, and the endless howl redoubled as the blade of light severed the cord.
The only other thing it could be is just a blade of pure Sidin.
Yeah.
And so
I could see that too.
Right.
I'd like to think it's Balefire because that's super badass, but I don't.
And when he says you can't wield it like this, I think he's not talking about Balefire. I think he's talking about the true source.
The true source?
Sorry, the one power. He's not talking about that specific weave. I think he's talking about just using the one power.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a ton of ambiguity here.
Yeah, and Jonathan Winter makes a good point that this book may not have been all the ideas in the series may have not been fully baked. I don't like to rely on that as like a crutch and say, oh, well, he just didn't really have everything straight. I like to pretend everything's consistent.
I do too.
So even though I know that might be an explanation, I like to sort of just pretend.
No, it totally is. It's a very reasonable
It's a very reasonable explanation. This is an author's first book. He doesn't have all his ideas fully baked yet. He's still figuring things out. He makes some changes later on for the sake of the story. All very good points, and all something that we pretty much ignore and live within the reality of what's on the page.
Yeah. Yeah, I just prefer to try to explain it in terms of the terms that explain the rest of the series.
Exactly. But I think everyone who reads this series has to understand that The Eye of the World is the least consistent book with the other 13.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Especially this chapter. Like more so than even any of the other chapters. There's some stuff with Moraine early on, and there's some stuff that happens that I can't entirely explain, but this chapter in particular is just full of things that are either deliberately left uncertain or are inconsistent with the rest of the series.
Yeah. I just choose to believe that the entire series is perfect.
Yeah. No, and I think I've said before that I choose to believe that these events actually happened and we're just seeing into them, and that if there's an inconsistency, it's, something we haven't figured out yet.
Oh yeah.
Not.
If I were to write out what happened here as canon, I could explain all this.
Totally.
I could find ways to, it's just not clear. But I could make up reasons why all these things worked.
I think we just did.
Oh, yeah. Came up with some darn good reasons.
Sure.
Oh, and I did want to talk about this second or third to the last paragraph here. As all broke apart around him, Rand pointed the sword at Baelzamon's heart. It is ended. Light lands from the blade. He just injured Ishamael here. Right,
because later in the next book, we see Ishamael suffering from burns, severe burns.
So it's definitely not Balefire.
No. And this is also the fire that gives him his first brand.
Oh, that's right.
So he's using his sword as a... That's right, isn't it? No, it's not. It's totally not. He brands both of his hands in the Great Hunt. The first time is in the Portal Stone world. The second time is when he stabs Baelzamon. He does not get a brand here.
This is just a sword made out of light. This isn't the time that he... Doesn't he channel through the sword at some point, and that's how it's melted?
I think doesn't he stab Baelzamon with it? That's how it melts? Yeah. Yeah, and he doesn't even pull the Heron Mark Mord sword. That's not what's in his hand. It's the Sword of Light this whole time. He's not using... I just read back. He's not using the Heron Mark blade. He's just got the Sword of Light.
Yeah. And I just have the last two paragraphs. Fire filled the chamber, a solid flame. He could see Baelzamon withering like a leaf, hear him howling, feel the shrieks grating on his bones. The flame became pure, white light, brighter than the sun. Then the last flicker of the thread was gone, and he was falling through an endless black, and Baelzamon's fading howl. Something struck him with tremendous force, turning him to jelly, and the jelly shook and screamed from the fire raging inside, the hungry cold burning without end.
So he basically falls out of Tel Ranyad back into the real world.
Yeah.
And he's, nearly burned out, probably at the edge of being exhausted.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I like your theory that he expanded his ability to channel amounts of power at this point, and it works really well with those last two paragraphs where he feels really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's made out of jelly, and
Scream.
jelly shook and screamed from the fire raging inside, and hungry cold burning without end. It sounds like Saidin, but it also doesn't sound like we don't see any other channeler. We don't see this happen to any other channeler.
Well, and this is definitely a special situation because of the Eye of the World.
The eye and the terrible stress he's put through while
fighting for survival, basically.
Yeah.
Both to seize the eye and then to fight Baelzamon in the world of dreams.
A couple great chapters there.
Oh, yeah. The amount of discarded, perfectly good items that people get rid of for free is high.
Yeah, literally the majority of the furniture in my apartment. We found my mattress. Do you remember the place over on Market and like 11th?
Yeah.
You remember that? We didn't even tie it to the top of your car. We just held onto it on both sides and drove it like 15 blocks. Yeah, most of my furniture was either stuff my friends didn't want anymore or stuff I found. I do have a couple of things from IKEA. I'm glad I got that nice cast iron recently.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I love the Goodwill. I've got some decent cast iron that I picked up. I got that cast iron wok that I really love.
Oh, yeah. I would love one of those.
That's fantastic.
Jules has a cool... It's kind of like the combination between a watt and a pock. A wok and a pot.
A wok and a pot, yeah.
That she cooks a ton of stuff in it. But you can sort of imagine. It's a lot like the one that you have, that cast iron.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like kind of shallow but like wide like this, and she makes a lot of like soups in it and stuff like that.
Does it have a flat bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
So she can put it on like a burner?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, so does mine.
Hers is stainless steel though. It's not cast iron.
Right. That's why mine's better.
Yeah. Well, no, I love cooking with the cast iron too, because you can I'll get it super hot. Like today I was sauteing some vegetables and then I added eggs to make a scramble. And that's just like what I ate for lunch, a ton of eggs and all the like leftover vegetable bits.
Mm-hmm.
And I just added the eggs and I like put a lid on it, waited a little, scrambled them up, and then I threw a thing of spinach and put a lid on it and just shut it off and just waited for the spinach to wilt a little. It's just cool that it holds the heat, Yeah. So you don't have to keep the burner on the whole time.
Right.
It'll continue to cook.
Although I have noticed the stainless steel does a better job of creating an even heat.
Yeah.
Because it's more conductive. So like even though the burner's only heating it in certain spots, the heat spreads out a little bit better. The cast iron definitely creates like a ring of heat. So what you want to do with the cast iron is make sure that it's nice and hot everywhere before you start cooking with it.
All right.
But that's, you preheat it. I assume you've been doing that.
Oh, yeah. I always just put oil in, and then I put the burner on high, and I start prepping ingredients.
And with my cast iron, it's the seasoning. Thank you. Yes. The seasoning is pretty tough. I've done that thing where I coat it with a very thin coat of oil and then put it in a 500-degree oven And I do that 3 or 4 or 5 times, and I get this just indestructible seasoning on the outside of the cast iron. And I can scrub that sucker with soap and water. I can take a spatula to it, and it is indestructible. And I cook eggs in it all the time.
I should do that. I just put it on high heat and painted it with oil over and over for when I first got it.
That definitely
probably
works.
A couple hours, but I didn't do the baking thing.
The baking thing just gets everything more even. Because again, when you got it on the burner, you're going to have hot spots and cold spots. Whereas in the oven, you're going to have a very even heat across the entire thing, and you'll get a more even seasoning. And honestly, I did the dangerous thing where I had it on. Oh yeah, baking it upside down is also a good idea. I just had it hot, and I'd put it in the oven, let it bake off all the oil until the smoke stopped coming out. And while it was still hot, I'd pull it out with a pan, and rub a little more oil on it and put it back in. Not as effective as waiting each time, but way faster. I've got a little cast iron pan that I use for 1 or 2 eggs. The big cast iron pan that I cook in 90% of the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a little one too.
And then the wok that is just great for veggies and stews. And I have a whole nice set of stainless steel pots and pans. I just don't use them that often.
Yeah.
I really love the cast iron. Homemade pizza, too.
Ooh. And bread. Didn't you used to bake bread in the cast iron pan?
Oh, yeah. I bake a ton of bread. All right. Do you want to dig into this chapter now that we've created the cooking podcast?
Today we're talking about cast iron. The do's and don'ts.
Oh, sorry. I got to interrupt. Enigma was saying they use a wood fire a few times a year to do theirs.
Yeah?
They're also great for camping. If you're car camping, you throw a cast iron just on your fire.
Yeah.
Obviously you're not going to, hike with a cast iron pan.
Yeah.
But if you're car camping, man, they are perfect because you can just cook a great meal in them over an actual fire and you're not going to ruin it.
That's a good point. The one I got, it's not a typical cast iron pan. It has a ceramic bottom.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?